Commander Day stood frozen at the viewport, his four eyes blinking in confusion as the human delegation approached. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. Not at all. "They're bringing gifts?" his assistant Taeho whispered, equally bewildered. "The protocol doesn't account for gifts." The Galactic Confederation had contacted 17 species before humans. Each encounter followed predictable patterns based on mathematical models developed over centuries. Species at humanity's technological level typically responded with cautious formality, careful diplomatic probing, and measured responses designed to protect their interests. Humans, apparently, hadn't read the manual. "Welcome to Earth," called out the lead human diplomat as the airlock opened. She was smiling widely, too widely according to Confederation contact protocols. Behind her, other humans carried colorful packages, musical instruments, and what appeared to be food containers. One human was even wearing a shirt with cartoon aliens saying, "Welcome space friends" in 15 Earth languages. "I am Commander Day of the Galactic Confederation," Day began formally, reciting the careful greeting that had been rehearsed and approved by 12 committees. "We come in peace to establish—" "We brought cake," interrupted a young human stepping forward with a large, sweet-smelling object. "It's chocolate." "Do you eat chocolate? Can you eat chocolate? We brought non-chocolate options too, just in case." Day's third heart began beating rapidly. This wasn't in the protocol. Nothing about cake appeared in their extensive study of human diplomatic customs. The AI advisor in his earpiece was unhelpfully silent, still processing this deviation. "Our analysis team studied your broadcast for 30 Earth years," Taeho said quietly. Nothing suggested this response. The human delegation wasn't just breaking protocol, they were shattering it. Some were taking pictures with personal devices. Others were trying to teach Confederation security officers something called a high five. The diplomatic AI, designed to predict responses and suggest optimal replies, simply shut down and rebooted twice. "We prepared formal documents outlining 16 potential alliance structures," Day said weakly, holding up a data pad. "Perfect. We'll review those over dinner," the lead human diplomat replied cheerfully. "I'm Jiwoo, by the way. We've set up a welcome party with food from every continent. We figured breaking bread together is the best way to start a friendship." "Breaking bread?" Day asked, genuinely confused whether this was a ritual involving destruction of food items. "It means eating together," explained another human named Hyunwoo. "We also prepared entertainment. Do your people dance? We love dancing." Day's cultural team huddled in a corner, frantically searching databases for information on human dancing and whether it posed security risks. The Confederation's most advanced predictive AI was now categorizing humans as chaotically variable after giving up on modeling their behavior. The humans were simultaneously discussing serious topics like technological exchange while casually inviting crew members to visit Earth's beaches. They mixed diplomatic language with jokes. They asked personal questions about Confederation families and hobbies, concepts no other species had ever raised during first contact. "They're completely unpredictable," Taeho whispered urgently. "The diplomatic AI has crashed 4 times trying to establish pattern recognition. Yet somehow, despite the chaos, actual progress was being made. While breaking every rule of formal contact, the humans were establishing genuine connections. They remembered names, noticed when Confederation members seemed uncomfortable, and adjusted their approach accordingly. By the end of the first meeting, Day found himself holding a small plant called a friendship fern, 3 drawings from human children depicting aliens and humans holding hands, and strangest of all, actually looking forward to the next meeting. That evening, Day sat in his quarters staring at the report he needed to send to Confederation headquarters. How could he explain that humans defied all existing contact models, yet somehow were proving remarkably effective at building relationships? Their unpredictability wasn't a disadvantage. It was perhaps their greatest strength. He began typing. Slowly, humans cannot be properly categorized within existing frameworks. They approach diplomatic relations with an emotional intelligence that defies logical modeling. They are unpredictable in ways that our systems cannot anticipate, Yet this unpredictability appears deliberately deployed to establish authentic connections. Day paused, then added, I believe we have much to learn from them. Their chaos has pattern, their randomness has purpose. I recommend immediate deep study of human unpredictability as a diplomatic strategy rather than attempting to force them into our existing models. The next day, when the humans suggested an informal barbecue instead of the scheduled treaty preliminary discussions, Day simply smiled and agreed. Perhaps unpredictability was contagious after all. The emergency alert echoed through the Confederation Command Center, turning the normally organized space into a flurry of activity. 3 colony worlds had already fallen to the rogue AI armada. The massive swarm of autonomous ships moved with perfect precision, anticipating and countering every defensive strategy the Confederation deployed. Commander Day stared at the holographic display, watching another carefully planned counterattack fall apart before it even began. The enemy adapted instantly, as if they could read minds. They're predicting our moves before we make them, said Admiral Keyoung, throwing down his tactical pad in frustration. Their probability algorithms are perfect. We follow logical battle doctrine and they know exactly what comes next. The room fell silent as the latest casualty reports scrolled across the screen. The Confederation's finest military minds, species, known throughout the galaxy for their strategic brilliance, were being outmaneuvered at every turn. What about the humans? The question came from Taiho, who had been quietly observing from the corner. Day considered this. The humans had been part of the Confederation for barely 6 months. Their military forces were tiny compared to other member species, yet that strange unpredictability that had so confused the first contact team. Get me Captain Jiwoo, Day ordered. 3 hours later, Jiwoo stood before the Confederation War Council, her small team of human tacticians looking oddly relaxed compared to the grim-faced aliens surrounding them. You want us to do what? Asked the Arcturian fleet commander, his scales flaring in disbelief after hearing Jiwoo's proposal. Deliberately transmit incorrect orders, Jiwoo repeated calmly. Send ships where they shouldn't go, create patterns that make no sense. That violates every principle of strategic doctrine, objected another council member. Warfare follows logical progressions. Your suggestion would create chaos in our own ranks. Jiwoo smiled. Exactly. The enemy AI predicts what you'll do because you always do what makes the most sense. So let's do what doesn't make sense. The council erupted in objections. Day watched silently as Jiwoo waited for the noise to subside. Look, she said, activating her own tactical display. Your ships move in optimal formations. Your attack patterns prioritize efficiency. You retreat when the statistical odds fall below a certain threshold. You're perfectly logical and perfectly predictable. She pulled up footage of human sports games of all things. This is basketball, she explained. Watch this player. He drives right every time, establishing a pattern. Then, she froze the frame. He goes left when everyone expects right. The defenders were calculating odds just like your enemy AI. The human breaks the pattern. Jiwoo's tactical officer, Minsu, stepped forward. We've analyzed the enemy's response times. They're not reacting to our movements. They're predicting them based on optimal decision trees. But humans rarely make purely optimal decisions. The council meeting lasted for hours. The human suggestions sounded increasingly absurd to the Confederation. Officers, attack patterns based on Earth music rhythms, communication protocols with deliberate errors, retreats that weren't really retreats. This isn't warfare, complained Admiral Keyoung. It's madness. That's the point, Jiwoo replied. Your enemy understands logic perfectly. It doesn't understand madness at all. With no alternatives left, the council reluctantly approved the human plan. Day watched nervously as the new approach was implemented. Fleet movements became erratic. Ships communicated in ways that made no mathematical sense. Attack formations followed patterns from human jazz improvisations rather than tactical doctrines. The results were immediate. The enemy AI faltered, its perfect predictions suddenly worthless. When Confederation ships retreated illogically, the AI committed forces to pursue. only to find itself caught in ambushes that should never have worked. "They're adapting," warned Taeho, monitoring the battle from the command center. "The AI is learning." "Good," said Jiwoo with a grin. "Time for Phase 2. Phase 2 was even more baffling to the Confederation officers. Just as the enemy began to detect patterns in the apparent chaos, the humans changed everything again. Now ships moved according to ancient Earthboard game strategies. Communications followed patterns based on human poetry. "It's working," exclaimed Day, watching as the enemy armada's perfect formations began to break apart. They can't predict what they can't understand. Within 3 days, the tide had turned. The rogue AI, programmed to counter logical opponents, couldn't adapt quickly enough to human unpredictability. Its algorithms, searching desperately for patterns, committed to flawed predictions. The Confederation forces, gradually embracing the strange human approach, pressed their advantage. A week later, the core of the enemy armada was surrounded and neutralized. Confederation analysts would spend years studying the battle data, trying to understand exactly how the human strategies had worked. In the aftermath, Day found Jiwoo in the observation deck, watching as repair ships tended to the damaged fleet. "Your approach defied everything we know about warfare," Day said. "Every tactical doctrine developed over thousands of years." Jiwoo smiled. "That was the point. Your doctrines were written to fight opponents who think like you do. The AI was designed to counter logical species. Humans have logic, but we don't always use it. The Council is calling it tactical chaos theory," Day said. "They want to develop formal doctrines based on unpredictability." Jiwoo laughed. "Maybe don't make it too formal. The best unpredictability is the kind you don't plan for." As Day left, he realized something profound had changed in the Confederation's understanding of strength. For millennia, they had valued predictability, consistency, and logical optimization. Now, for the first time, they were seeing the power of being unpredictable. The ships in the viewport continued their repairs, but they no longer moved in perfect formation. Here and there, patterns broke. Ships zigged when they should have zagged, and somehow the fleet looked stronger for it. The grand atrium of the Confederation Cultural Center buzzed with activity as delegates from 17 species mingled, exchanged information, and studied each other with scholarly precision. 6 months into the official cultural exchange program, patterns had emerged that fascinated the Confederation anthropologists. Most species approached cultural learning methodically. The insectoid Vex created elaborate taxonomies of human customs, categorizing and subcategorizing every observed behavior. The crystalline Luminar developed mathematical models of human art, trying to decode the underlying patterns. The gaseous Ether Collective recorded and analyzed human speech patterns through specialized frequency detection arrays. And then there were the humans. "He's doing it again," sighed Senior Cultural Officer Yuna, watching human diplomat Minho enthusiastically attempting to learn a traditional draconian greeting ritual from an increasingly bewildered draconian elder. The ritual, which normally required 6 weeks of careful study and practice, involved precise movements of all 4 limbs in specific sequences. Minho was cheerfully botching most of the movements but somehow maintaining the essence of the greeting in a way that made the draconian elder tilt his scaled head in surprised appreciation. "Humans don't follow the standard learning protocols," observed Taeho, who had become the Confederation's unofficial human expert since first contact. "They jump in without complete information and adapt as they go." Across the atrium, 3 other humans were attempting to prepare a traditional Luminar crystal tea ceremony, while simultaneously teaching a group of Luminars how to make Earth-style dumplings. The hybrid cooking class had not been on the official schedule, but nobody had been able to stop it once it began. "They're contaminating pure cultural exchange with hybridization," complained Cultural Preservation Officer Jin. "How can we document authentic human cuisine if they're already blending it with Luminar ingredients?" "That's exactly what makes them fascinating," replied Taeho. "They don't preserve their culture in amber. They evolve it through contact." The Confederation's official cultural exchange protocols had been carefully designed over centuries. Species would first observe each other, then document observations, then engage in controlled exchanges of specific customs. Integration and adaptation were scheduled to begin no earlier than the 5th year of contact. The humans had skipped straight to adaptation on day 1. "Ambassador Day wishes to see you," a message chimed on Tejo's communication band. "Urgent. Situation in the ceremonial hall." Tejo hurried across the cultural center, already guessing the nature of the emergency. Sure enough, when he arrived at the ceremonial hall, he found chaos. Today was supposed to be a carefully staged demonstration of the ancient draconian treaty ceremony, a sacred ritual unchanged for 12,000 years. In the center of the hall stood Minho, smiling broadly, surrounded by startled Confederation officials and unusually animated draconian elders. "What happened?" Tejo whispered to Day, who looked both worried and oddly amused. "He added something called a toast to the blood oath portion of the ceremony," Day explained. "Instead of simply drinking the ritual-binding liquid, he raised his cup, said some words about friendship and new beginnings, and then had everyone touch cups before drinking. The protocol office must be furious," Tejo said, looking for the inevitably outraged officials. "That's the strange part," Day replied. "The Draconian Elder Council is delighted. They're calling it an improvement on a ceremony they've performed the same way for 12 millennia. Indeed, the ancient Draconian elders, normally the most formal and traditional of all Confederation species, were enthusiastically practicing the human toast motion, clinking their ceremonial cups together with an undraconian display of enjoyment. The humans don't just study other cultures," Day said thoughtfully. "They experience them, embrace them, and somehow change them without destroying them." Over the following weeks, more incidents followed. A human linguist learned the notoriously difficult ether communication patterns, not through analysis but by feeling the rhythm of the gaseous being's vibrations. A human artist combined Vex color perception theories with earth painting techniques to create artworks that both species found strangely moving. The Confederation's cultural databases struggled to categorize these hybrid interactions. The careful documentation protocols designed to preserve cultural purity couldn't account for the way humans naturally blended elements from different traditions. 3 months later, Tejo presented his findings to the Confederation Cultural Council. "Humans approach cultural exchange differently than any species we've encountered," he explained, showing footage of various exchange incidents. "While we methodically study and categorize, they immerse and adapt. They learn languages by speaking them before mastering grammar. They adopt customs by practicing them before understanding their historical context." "Isn't that superficial?" asked a council member. "True cultural understanding requires deep analysis." "That's what we thought," Tejo replied, "but our research suggests humans achieve deep understanding through engagement rather than analysis. They make mistakes, but those mistakes often lead to innovations that neither culture would have discovered alone." The evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. The human approach, chaotic, unsystematic, and unpredictable, was producing remarkable results. Cultural exchanges that should have taken decades were happening in months. Species that had been members of the Confederation for centuries were discovering new elements of each other's cultures through human-facilitated interactions. "They're cultural catalysts," Day told the council. "Their unpredictability in this realm, as in diplomacy and warfare, is not a weakness but a strength. They make connections others miss because they're not following predetermined patterns." As the meeting ended, a message arrived that perfectly illustrated the point. The Draconian Elder Council had formally modified their ancient treaty ceremony to permanently include the human toast tradition, the first change to the ritual in 12,000 years. "I still don't understand how they do it," Jin admitted as they left the council chamber. "Their approach lacks proper structure and methodology." Tejo smiled, watching a group of humans and luminars across the atrium, excitedly sharing stories. Despite their vastly different biologies and perceptual systems, "Maybe that's exactly why it works," he said. "They're not trying to solve culture like a puzzle, they're living it." The holographic projection in the center of the emergency council chamber showed a swirling mass of distorted spacetime. Spatial anomaly had appeared 3 weeks ago near the Confederation's central worlds and was growing at an alarming rate. Already, 2 outer monitoring stations had been consumed by the phenomenon. "The physics are impossible," stated Chief Scientist June, his normally calm voice tight with stress. "It defies all known natural laws. The anomaly exists in multiple dimensional states simultaneously while following none of the standard quantum principles." Around the table, the Confederation's greatest scientific minds sat in grim silence. For the first time in recorded history, they faced a problem with no theoretical solution. "At the current expansion rate, the anomaly will reach our homeworlds within 60 days, continued June. "Evacuation plans are being developed, but relocating trillions of beings is—" He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew it was impossible. "ND." The back of the room, Dr. Subin from the Human Science Delegation whispered to her colleagues. Their conversation grew animated, drawing irritated glances from the Confederation scientists. "Do the humans have something to add?" asked High Counselor Min, noticing the exchange. Subin stood, looking slightly embarrassed by the attention but determined. "We have an idea, but it's unconventional." "We've explored all conventional approaches," June replied dismissively. "The anomaly cannot be contained using any known scientific principles." "That's just it," Subin said, moving toward the hologram. "We think we need to try something unknown. Something that theoretically shouldn't work." The room filled with murmurs as Subin explained the human team's proposal. They wanted to combine technologies that were considered incompatible, luminar phase crystals with Vex quantum resonators, powered by modified human fusion technology. According to all established science, this combination would be unstable, at best catastrophic at worst. "This is not science," protested one of the senior researchers. "It's guesswork based on incomplete understanding of the technologies involved." "Exactly," agreed another scientist. "The phase variances alone make this combination impossible. The equations clearly show—" "The equations might be wrong," interrupted Subin's colleague Junho. "Or incomplete. The anomaly shouldn't exist, either, according to those same equations." High Counselor Min studied the humans carefully. "Your species has been part of the Confederation for barely a year. Our scientists have developed these theories over millennia, and we respect that knowledge," Subin assured him. "But sometimes a fresh perspective can see different possibilities. The anomaly breaks all the rules. Maybe the solution needs to break them too." After hours of heated debate, the Council rejected the human proposal as too risky and unscientific. The Confederation would continue pursuing conventional approaches while accelerating evacuation plans. 3 days later, Dave found himself summoned to an unauthorized lab in a remote section of the science complex. Inside, he found Subin and her team working feverishly amid a jumble of equipment that definitely shouldn't have been connected together. "You're not supposed to be doing this," Dave said, though without much conviction. "We know," Subin replied, not looking up from her work. "But we couldn't just wait while everyone prepares to run away." Against his better judgment, Dave found himself asking, "How can I help?" The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. The human team worked around the clock, ignoring standard protocols and combining technologies in ways that made the Confederation engineers wince. Their approach was nothing like the methodical Confederation scientific process. They tried configurations that failed spectacularly, learned from the failures, and immediately tried again with modifications. "This is madness," muttered Taiho, watching Subin connecting a luminar crystal to a power source at settings that should have shattered it instantly. "Maybe," agreed Day. "But standard approaches aren't working." What amazed Day most was the humans' resilience in the face of failure. When experiments collapsed, they would take a break, joke about the explosion, and start again with renewed energy. They celebrated small breakthroughs with disproportionate enthusiasm. They named pieces of equipment with ridiculous nicknames, and somehow, they were making progress. "Their method makes no sense," June said when he finally discovered the unauthorized project. "They're working backwards, building the device before fully understanding the theory." "Is that so different from how many great discoveries happened?" asked Day. "Trial and error has its place in science." "Not like this," June insisted. They're combining intuitive leaps with methodical testing. They're embracing contradictory data instead of resolving the contradictions first. It's chaotic. Yet the chaos was yielding results. The human team had created a device that, according to all Confederation science, couldn't possibly work. Yet preliminary tests showed it generating the exact subspace frequency that their models suggested might stabilize the anomaly. On the day of the first full test, the anomaly suddenly accelerated its growth rate. Evacuation orders went out across 3 systems as panic began to spread. "We're out of time," Subin told the Emergency Council. "Our device is ready for deployment." "Your untested theoretical device that violates fundamental physical laws?" asked one of the counselors. "Yes, that one," Subin replied with a tight smile. "The one that might save trillions of lives." With no alternatives left, the council approved the desperate measure. The device, a strange hybrid of technologies from 6 different species, was loaded onto a drone ship and sent toward the heart of the anomaly. In the control center, humans and Confederation scientists alike held their breath as the ship approached the swirling distortion. The device activated, sending out pulses of energy that, according to established science, should have torn reality apart further. Instead, the anomaly began to stabilize. "It's working," exclaimed Junho, watching the readings. "The dimensional variances are normalizing." Over the next 3 days, the anomaly gradually collapsed in on itself, until nothing remained but normal space. In the aftermath, Confederation scientists spent months trying to understand exactly how the human solution had worked. They developed new theories, expanded existing ones, and eventually created mathematical models that explained the previously impossible. "You know what the strangest part is?" June said today as they reviewed the final reports. Their solution wasn't actually random. There was logic to it, just not the kind of logic we were trained to see. Day nodded thoughtfully. They found the pattern in the chaos that we couldn't see because we weren't looking for it. Human unpredictability had once again saved the day, proving that sometimes the impossible just needed a different perspective to become possible after all. The Grand Hall of Knowledge fell silent as Commander Day stepped onto the presentation platform. 2 standard years had passed since first contact with humans, 2 years that had transformed the Confederation's understanding of intelligence, adaptability, and survival. Today's symposium marked the official unveiling of Day's comprehensive research findings. The audience contained representatives from all 17 Confederation species, along with a sizable human delegation. The humans were easy to spot. They were the ones fidgeting, whispering to each other, and failing to sit in perfect symmetric alignment like everyone else. "Esteemed colleagues," Day began, activating the holographic display. "For the past 2 years, I have led the Xenoanthropology Division's study of human behavior and decision-making patterns. Today, I present our findings and a new classification system that acknowledges what we now call productive unpredictability as an evolutionary advantage rather than a deficiency." The first images appeared, footage from the chaotic first contact, the unconventional battle strategies against the AI armada, the cultural hybridization incidents, and finally, the impossible solution to the spatial anomaly. Prior to human contact, the Confederation classified species according to their predictability index, their ability to follow logical patterns of behavior based on established information. High predictability was considered the mark of an advanced civilization. Duray paused, looking directly at the human delegation. "We were wrong." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Such a direct admission of error was uncommon in Confederation discourse. "Our new research shows that human decision-making incorporates multiple elements we previously considered contradictory: emotional, intelligence, intuitive leaps, and what we might call deliberate randomness. This combination produces outcomes that even our most advanced AI systems cannot reliably predict." The hologram shifted to show brain scans comparing different species. The human brains lit up in strikingly different patterns than the others when faced with identical problems. Humans don't just think differently, they think inconsistently. Their neural pathways vary not just between individuals, but within the same individual under different circumstances. This inconsistency, which we once considered a flaw, proves remarkably effective in novel situations. Taiho joined Dai on the platform, adding, "We've identified 3 key components to human unpredictability. First, they incorporate emotional data alongside logical analysis. Second, they make intuitive connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. Third, and most intriguingly, they sometimes deliberately introduce randomness into their decision-making to avoid becoming too predictable." The presentation continued with specific examples from the past 2 years. The diplomatic incidents where humans broke protocol, yet achieved stronger relationships. The battle strategies that defied tactical doctrine yet defeated the unbeatable enemy. The cultural exchanges that violated preservation guidelines yet enriched both sides. Our research concludes that while predictable species excel in stable environments with known variables, humanity's adaptability makes them uniquely suited for crisis response and innovation in unstable conditions. In the audience, Chief Scientist June raised a hand. This suggests unpredictability only provides advantages in crisis situations. Is that your conclusion? Initially, yes, Day admitted. But our long-term studies reveal something more profound. The universe itself is inherently chaotic. What we perceive as stability is merely temporary order within larger patterns of change. Species that optimize for perfect prediction within stable systems become vulnerable when those systems inevitably transform. The final section of the presentation focused on practical applications. The Confederation was already implementing changes based on the research, hybridizing their logical approaches with elements of human unpredictability. The new Joint Defense Academy training program now includes what humans call creative thinking, exercises alongside traditional tactical doctrines, explained Taiho. Diplomatic protocols now allow for controlled deviations when standard approaches fail. Scientific methodologies now incorporate both structured analysis and intuitive exploration. An Arcturian delegate stood, their crystalline form catching the light. Isn't there risk in abandoning our tried methods for human chaos? Absolutely, Day agreed, which is why we're not abandoning anything. The strongest approach is integration, not replacement. Logic and predictability remain valuable tools. We're simply adding unpredictability as another tool in our collective arsenal. As the formal presentation concluded, the audience broke into discussion groups. Day watched with satisfaction as Confederation scientists engaged with human colleagues in animated conversation, a scene unimaginable 2 years ago. They're still not entirely comfortable with us, are they? Observed Jiwoo, the human captain who had led the unconventional battle against the AI armada. Change takes time, Day replied. For millennia, we believed advancement meant increasing order and predictability. Your species challenged our most fundamental assumptions about intelligence itself. We didn't mean to cause such a philosophical crisis, Jiwoo said with a smile. That's exactly the point of my research, Day said. You didn't plan to transform our understanding of the universe. You just did what came naturally to you. Your unpredictability is not a strategy. It's your essence. Across the hall, a new group of cadets entered, the first graduates of the Lao Joint Academy of Strategic Unpredictability. Unlike the rigid formations of traditional Confederation education, these young officers moved with fluid adaptability, a blend of logical precision and human spontaneity. Look at them, Taiho said, joining Day and Jiwoo. Neither fully predictable nor totally chaotic, taking the best of both approaches. The oldest and most conservative member of the council approached their group, his ancient eyes studying the graduates. I was among the most vocal opponents of human inclusion in the Confederation, he admitted. I believed your unpredictability represented a lesser form of intelligence, a primitive state that advanced species outgrew. And now? Asked Jiwoo. Now I understand that the future security of our galaxy depends on balancing order with disorder, prediction with adaptation. We need both the logical precision of the Confederation and the creative chaos of humanity. As The event concluded. Day updated his research notes one final time. The integration of human unpredictability into Confederation systems marks not just a change in procedure, but a fundamental shift in our understanding of intelligence itself. The most advanced form of thinking is not the most predictable, it is the most adaptable. In embracing controlled chaos alongside logical order, we have found a balance that neither humans nor the Confederation could have achieved alone. Outside, the Grand Hall, stars shone in unfamiliar patterns for those who knew how to see them. Beautiful, unpredictable, and full of possibilities no one could fully predict.